Welcome to AI for UX. This is a space where UX researchers and product leaders stay current with AI innovations. And I'm John, the founder of Brilliant Experience, and we're a psychology-driven product innovation firm. So I've struggled to keep up with all the new AI tools for research, and I'm guessing I'm not alone. That's why I started this series. And in each installment, we speak to a founder of one of the latest AI-enhanced tools and dive deeper into how it might benefit you, the inspiration for the tool, and ultimately where our field is headed. And just a quick note, these videos aren't product endorsements, and Brilliant pays full price for any technologies we use. And no one's getting paid, it's just to learn more about technologies together. So with that, let me get started. I'd like to welcome Kene Anoliefo. So Kene is a co-founder of Heard, a tool for AI-powered interviews that helps you discover what customers need fast. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview and talk to us. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thanks, John. I'm really excited to be able to talk a little bit more about this space and share more about what we're building at Heard.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's get right to it and talk about Heard. So just ultimately, who is this? Who's sort of your target audience for Heard, and what sort of pain points does it address?
Yeah, so Heard helps product, marketing, and research teams learn about their customers fast. And we do that by using AI to conduct user interviews. So we speed up the time that it takes to run qualitative user research from over 4 weeks in the old world to under 48 hours using Heard. And because of that, we're able to save teams over 30 hours of manual work per research study. And we actually counted with some of our customers. So we know that that number is pretty accurate. And so the companies that work with us are able to actually double the amount of research that they can do on a monthly basis, because not only do we help you get the research done faster, but we also make it possible for anyone on the team, regardless of whether or not they're a trained user researcher, to be able to drive research forward. So it could be a PM, it could be a designer, it could even be an engineer, right? We empower everyone to be a customer expert, even if they're not yet a research expert. And the real magic behind the scenes about the way that everything works is that we train different AIs to be good at executing different tasks within the research lifecycle. So that might be helping you to design a research study. It might be writing your discussion guide, actually moderating that one-on-one conversation directly with your customers. And then, of course, taking all of the insights that you learned, synthesizing those into actionable things that your team can do next after you finish running the research.
Very cool. And we offer a new offering here, Brilliant 2, where we do accelerated insights. And I say that we went from 7 weeks to 7 days, and for a large study. And it's really we found that to be very true. No, it's kind of remarkable to try to think about how fast you can do things and what you can do because of that. So maybe you could just describe it. I think you alluded to this, that it really is sort of democratizing research. But is there a typical scenario when a researcher or someone on a product team might use your tool?
Yeah, definitely. So we work with product marketing teams, and then the PMs, the researchers, or the marketers on those teams. And we've been lucky to work with a really wide range of companies, from early stage startups to large public companies, mostly in the tech world, so both consumer and B2B tech, and then direct to consumer. And so we've worked with early stage startups, one really popular AI consumer company that has tens of millions of users. And because they have tens of millions of users, they're having some difficulty figuring out what are the specific use cases that we should focus on, because everyone's using this product in a completely different way. So what we did with them is actually to talk to thousands of their users, build this sort of taxonomy of here are all of the use cases that are emerging for your product, and then actually be able to identify here are the highest value use cases that you should focus on based off of the sentiment, based off of the frequency and other sort of indicators that came in through those interviews. So that's really core product strategy work that we were able to do that ended up influencing both their product, their AI research roadmap, as well as their growth and marketing strategy. But we also work with a lot of teams on very kind of core day-to-day product and marketing work. So we like to say, we're built for any part of the product lifecycle, whether it's, hey, we're just trying to learn about a customer base and sort of understand what their needs and their problems are so we can go and do those types of generative insights. Or let's say you just launched a new product and you actually want to get feedback on it from
Mhm.
early adopters so that you can understand how it's working. You can use her to talk to those folks, get that feedback, and then be able to really decide how you want to iterate next. So both those like high level
Mhm.
strategic projects where it helps to get a really large data set, as well as that core day-to-day product work where you're trying to get information fast so that your teams can iterate really quickly.
Is it typical? You mentioned the really large example where you're essentially not quite affinity mapping, but finding these different types of use of the tool. Is that something that's a typical scenario, or is that sort of? I guess I'm what I'm asking is it both your specialty to really do the interviews and collect the data, as well as for it to really help you with the analysis?
Yeah, so our tool works across the entire research lifecycle. So we're not just helping you to actually set up the interview and design the discussion guide. We're also moderating, but then again, most importantly, we're helping to actually, synthesize insights from that data. And we've spent a lot of time really working on our own proprietary algorithm to be able to help extract those insights with a high level of accuracy and precision. And so for us, again, if we're going to empower more people to participate in research, it has to be full stack. It has to be able to handle
Mm-hmm.
every single aspect of the
Mm-hmm.
research lifecycle. You've got to be able to test in any form factor you want, in any environment you want, with any type of customer you want. And so that's really where we've done a lot of foundational work and where we'll continue to head just to make that,
Yeah.
make our product a really universal research tool.
Interesting. First of all, ambitious and impressive, and also cool. So, well, I did want to ask you. There are some folks that have tools that really focus on, say, the data collection, or others that are sort of research repositories, and still others that are sort of CX lifecycle, and so there are some, somewhat equivalents. So maybe what makes Herd sort of stand out or unique?
Yeah, I mean, a few different things. The first is that I'm really proud of how much time and energy we've put into how we've built the AI. And I think a lot of products that are popping up in this space on the surface look similar, and there's some truth to that because there are, a set of foundational features that you need to have in order to even be in the game. But both my co-founder and I have spent our entire careers really building AI products. So we're super familiar with the space even before it became kind of, a fad, not a
Yeah.
passing fad, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely a fad within the last couple of years. And so we knew it was important to be really thoughtful in how we do it. And so the first sort of differentiating aspect that we think it's important and it's important to our customers is that we've actually trained different models to be used in different places to be good at specific tasks. So there's going to be a different AI that's going to be helping you design a research study, and a different AI that's moderating to a different AI that's actually helping you synthesize the data, because there are a different range of sort of specialties that are needed to be really good at that. So on top of actually training those AIs, we also spend a lot of time testing every single model that comes on the market. We make time to really say, hey, is it best to use our model
Mm-hmm.
here versus a fine-tuned version of 4.0 versus should we try Gemini's Multimodal Live with this new sort of multimodal product that we're building? So we're always going to give you sort of the best configuration given the models that are on the market at any given time. And then on top of that, also giving you the ability to customize and fine tune it in different ways to make sure that it's super aligned to what you do. And then I would say the second big piece that we're focused on right now is just making sure that we can be wherever your product is and wherever your customers are. So making it really easy for you to actually drop Herd into your product environment so that you can test it with your customers as they're using your product in real time, which is great for anything around usability or even just increasing the context that people bring to research so that it's as valuable as possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And when you mentioned the different models, I even going to, so I mean, I'm learning like everyone, but seeing how many there are, even on that like Hugging Face, for example, there's millions of them, and then there are the very prominent ones, and keeping up even with the most frontier ones is impressive. So very cool. Well, I did want to ask, so if you're doing that work for me and I'm your customer, how do I think differently about, from my 2022, how I did research to now, how should I think differently about working with a tool like yours, and just kind of how has my process changed once I have your tool?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first way that research changes with a tool like ours is that it can be much more iterative and much more exploratory. So if you were to take a step back and think about where the whole ecosystem of product development is going, it is being transformed by AI powered tools. And even before sort of the AI revolution of the last 2 years, it's never been easier to build things. It's super easy for anyone to create and deploy code. Like there's Vercel, there's
Mm-hmm.
Replit, there's
Yeah.
Cursor, right? Even on the design side, we all know how Figma came in and made collaborative developer focused design really the norm. So everywhere else in the product development process feels like it's getting increasingly iterative, increasingly collaborative, and also multidisciplinary to where any single person in the process or on the team can drive research forward. But that still hasn't yet manifested in a real way with research because it still feels really brittle. It still feels kind of expensive to stand up. And I think it creates this really negative anti-pattern with product teams when they're doing product discovery, because product discovery is the time where you're supposed to be most exploratory and curious. Like you're
Right.
looking for new
Yeah.
innovation. You're looking to push your company and find new global maximum. But because research has traditionally been so expensive, teams end up being really risk averse to start. They end up just whittling down the universe of candidates to consider to things that are oftentimes just really obvious or the thing that everyone in the company like thinks they should build anyway, right? Because it takes so much time to run research. And if you're a product person, you've only got 4 to 6 weeks in your roadmap allotted for research. So
Mm-hmm.
there's this path dependency of once you start, research sometimes becomes a way to check the box and validate that you kind of did all of the
Mm-hmm.
things rather than
Yeah.
being truly generative, truly exploratory, truly trying to see, am I considering and looking for what's going to, push my customer experience forward? And so I think the way that people can use Herd now that it's in their tool house is to say, hey, if we've got a few different ideas that we're interested in, we no longer have to pick one and hope that it's the right bet. Let's do two or three or maybe even five or 10 over the course of a couple of weeks and dedicate 1 to 2 day sprints to kind of quickly get ideas out there and get feedback back. And doing that is not only going to help you feel more confident as you're making choices moving forward, but I think it also makes the team feel like, hey, we're actually lifting up every rock, exploring the things that are actually going to make our customer experience better, which then will make everything that happens downstream run much more smoothly because design will have more confidence in sort of the work that we did up front that helps us understand what's important to customers. The engineering team is going to have more of a basis in terms of what matters to customers because we've tested things and we've pressure tested them in different ways. And so just adding a little bit more time up front to explore more is going to help the process move faster and be more aligned in the future.
Yeah. First of all, very eloquent. Thank you. And I think a bit of us UXers need that cheerleader to remind people of those kind of benefits. And so knowing that you've got this world of actually being able to turn over so many more rocks is actually a really interesting thing that I don't think people realize at the first day that they have these kind of tools at their disposal. So it's really good that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I did want to ask a number of folks ask me when they're thinking about these sort of products a couple things like just will it just make things up? Is it biased in any way? Will my data be shared with other teams? I think I know all the answers to these things, but I wanted to just let you have a moment to talk about how your system works and how you address these kind of topics without giving us your secret sauce technically, but just generally how you're approaching
Yeah,
it.
of course. Well, from a data privacy perspective, we take our customers' data very seriously, especially because they're trusting us to interact with their customers who are the lifeblood of their business. So we don't collect any information about your customers automatically, no PII, nothing about them comes through our system or stays through our system. And we don't use any of your data to train our models. So we go and build our own data sets with real user researchers. And for some of our customers, they're now using the product so much that they do want to have unique and custom models, and we'll do that for you if that's something that's important. But just off top, none of our models are trained using your data. And then I do think that, even as an AI enthusiast that's like incredibly optimistic about this space, the reality is that we're still in sort of the infancy of understanding generative AI and understanding large language models. And at the core, these technologies are a black box, right? And so we take that very, very seriously. I mean, some people are talking about super intelligence. We're still just trying to figure out how to get the AI to follow the set of tasks that we've trained it for.
Yeah.
And so, as I was talking about earlier, we spent a lot of time looking into the models, testing and evaluating them. And on the sort of spectrum from how creative and risk-taking you can be versus how sort of conservative you can be with AI, we're pretty conservative in the guardrails that we've set up, both through our training and then other tools that we have to build guardrails to make sure that you're always going to have a positive interaction when people interact with our moderator. And then on top of that, everything is testable. Like you can really test it, pressure test it, have your team pressure test it, do it as many times as you want before you put it in front of customers, so that you can also, feel confident on top of the work that we've done to really build those guardrails as well.
Cool. And actually, that last point is a really good one that we always, I find it so, I don't know, not necessarily comforting, but I really convince myself that it's going to perform the kinds of ways that I'm anticipating, and I'm asking the questions the right ways and getting it to do follow-ons and so on appropriately. Can I actually ask, I wasn't expecting to ask this, but you mentioned doing custom models for different folks. I was imagining, and I just wanted to make sure I've got the right idea. For example, we were working with very sophisticated scientists that were doing single cell sequencing and RNA strand analysis and so on. So they might have very specialized like names or processes and things like that. Is that a reason to do a custom training on a model, or are there other reasons that you're doing that?
Yeah, I think the biggest reasons are around just the performance of the model in real time. And so when you do your own custom training, you can actually internalize a lot of knowledge about your company, your customers, as well as just your product within the model. So that model has like that inherent knowledge, the same inherent knowledge that someone who works at your company might have, versus having a baseline knowledge maybe of your company and your space, and then having to sort of augment that in real time as we're talking to your customer. So the baseline models are trained and are really effective at what they do, because we've trained it with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of examples at this point. But folks who do custom models just want to add even more knowledge that can be internal to the model itself, which just helps to increase the performance over time.
Okay, nice. Well, thank you. I'm glad I asked. Well, one of the things that I did want to do is give you. We've sort of talked through Herd, so maybe we should just really show folks, and maybe I can work on the technology to try to share your screen, and maybe you could just tell me the scenario you might be talking us through to show us an example of using Herd.
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned that one of sort of the very core use cases that people do on a weekly basis is to get feedback for new products or features that they launched. And so I'll share a demo from the perspective of one of our customers, Ritual. They are a health and wellness brand that creates vitamins and supplements for men and women. And when we met Ritual, they had just released this new product called Hyacera, which was their first foray into a supplement for skincare. And their research team is led by Emma Wu, and her goal was to really get rapid feedback from early users about their experience, because that feeds the marketing team, and that feeds the marketing team's customer acquisition strategy, their creative strategy, as well as the digital team, like how they actually build the digital experience around marketing and acquire people to be subscribers. And for them, their main challenges were, the marketing team wants that information really fast, but usually it'll take Emma, anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to run those qualitative interviews. And the second is that Emma herself was really stretched thin over all of the different kind of innovation projects that were happening at Ritual. And so when we first heard from Emma, it was pretty clear that it could help her meet her goal of getting insights fast and also freeing her up to work on some more strategic work. But it was almost kind of a like, it sounds too good to be true thing. And so we talked a little bit about it and we said, well, let's run an A/B test and let's run an A/B test across 2 tracks. So in track 1, Emma's going to do her normal routine of 10 to 15 virtual interviews or in-person interviews. And then in track 2, we'll use her to interview about 150 Ritual subscribers, and then we'll compare their results head to head. So now that I've done that setup, I'll just kind of walk you through, if you were Emma, sort of the process you would go through to set up this study. So in your internal dashboard, and this is my demo account, you'll press New Study. And the first thing that we do is we get you started with a few common use cases across product and marketing. So it could be, validating an idea for a new product or feature. It could be deep diving on a customer complaint to really try to understand what's going on there. In this case, she wanted to get feedback on a recently launched product. So I'm going to click this one. And the first part of the process is actually just sharing some information about the product and what you're hoping to learn so that the AI can design the research study for you. So it'll start you off by asking a few questions. The first is, does your product have a different user-facing name than your company name? And in this case, yes. The product is called Hyacera, so we'll just put that in here. And then it wants you to describe some key sort of factors about the product. So what problem is this product or feature solving for your customers? So I'll just copy and paste a really simple description here. It's a skin supplement. It's designed to really hydrate your skin and reduce wrinkles. And then next, it wants to know how would we describe sort of the key features of this product. And we'll just, again, drop another description here that talks a little bit about the ingredients and sort of the formulation and how customers take it. And so when you click next, the next thing that we'll do is actually formulate a set of learning goals for your research study. And the learning goals are the high-level research objectives that we aim to meet by running your study and talking to your customers. So these are the types of insights that you'll have after you run the study. And a lot of platforms that I've seen kind of skip this step. And I think this is pretty crucial because not only do we need to understand what it is that you want to learn before we design a research study for you, all of this context gets given to our moderator. And so it's always going to have your research objectives top of mind, which will enable it to ask the best questions possible. And so you'll see here that we've recommended 5 different learning objectives or learning goals. And with everything for our product, the AI will always start you off by recommending something, but you have full control over what you want to keep versus what you want to edit or remove. So let's say I like these first 5 learning goals because they are really great insights that's going to help my team understand how to improve this product, how people discovered it, what motivated them to try it, how satisfied are they with it, and any challenges they're facing. And let's say I didn't really care too much about the last learning goal. I could remove that, and then I could add any learning objective that was important to me. And when I click next, it's going to start to build the discussion guide for the interview. And this is exactly the same concept of if you were walking into an in-person interview and you had sort of a discussion guide with the questions that you wanted to ask, but you wanted to keep it open to be able to explore and dig in deeper based off of what people say. Our interview works the same exact way. So for each of these discussion questions, the AI will use it to sort of kick off a topic. And then subsequently, it'll ask follow-up questions that are going to adapt in real time based off of what people say.
I'm so sorry. Just a quick question, because it's really fascinating the way this works. If I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the researcher, but if you had
Emma,
if Emma had, say, 2 categories of potential target audiences, so like older and younger, or people who are outside more, whatever the case might be, is there a way to sort of factor that into how it's addressing this or getting to participants?
Yeah, I mean, she could put some of that information within the research details or the learning
Mm.
goals if she wanted to
Hmm.
tease that out. For a lot of folks, if they have two different cohorts or segments and they really want to be able to get and go deeper with things that are
Hmm.
relevant to those cohorts or segments, they'll just create different studies that will
Okay.
target each. Yeah, and then afterwards they'll be able to just compare and contrast the information from each customer segment.
Cool. Thank you. And yeah, please go ahead. It's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So you see that we've got 8 discussion topics to start with. Again, you can add your own, you could remove any of these. And then we give you some additional ways to kind of fine tune it. So let's say I wanted to dig into this discussion question, which is about your expectations for Hyacera. So the first thing that we allow you to do is that you can ask different types of questions. Most of the time, people will use open for most of the interviews because that's, what they're trying to accomplish is do an open-ended exploration. But you can also do more closed-ended traditional type survey questions like single select, rating, multi-select. It'll still dig in and follow up to ask more questions based off of what people said. So if you do some sort of rating and you want people to rate on a scale from 1 to 10 and someone chooses 2, it's going to dig in and follow up and say, oh, hey, well, what caused you to choose 2? What are some of the issues that you faced? Versus people who choose 10, it might be looking into what really delighted them about the product. The second thing that we do is actually allow you to do some fine tuning for the moderator for that particular discussion question. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do our own training. So the base model that we use is really, really good already at asking good follow-up questions according to like really sound user research methodology. But sometimes there are either nuances about a subject that you want to make sure the AI understands, or there's just a particular topic that you really want to prioritize. And we give you the ability to sort of align those follow-up questions to what matters most to you. And you can do that in a couple of ways. You can give feedback to potential follow-up questions here, or you can even add your own follow-up question. It doesn't guarantee that anything's going to be actually said in real time because, that's the whole magic of this. We're responding to what people say in real time. But it does give the AI more signal that this is important to you so that it can prioritize it as it's interviewing your customers. And then lastly, you can also attach different forms of media to your interview. So if you wanted to include an image, so let's say you wanted to show creative or a mock-up of something, you can do that. You can also do a YouTube link if you want to like test out content or some sort of video asset, or include Figma if you actually want people to interact in real time with a prototype. You're also able to do that here by attaching it to any of these discussion topics. So let's say you had your discussion guide all set and good to go. I'll just walk you through a few of the settings that you can control, and then we'll talk about how to do recruitment for it. So we have this concept of chattiness, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's how chatty the bot is. It's how much time it spends on each discussion topic. And so you have the ability to kind of change that chattiness to be more brief, which means it spends less time, to be more extended, which means it's going to dig in and ask even more follow-up questions. We also allow you to set a target interview duration, and then we use that to help you kind of understand the target number of interviews that you should aim for, which is going to be a combination of factors like the discussion questions you chose, sort of your chattiness, and your target interview duration. And you have still, again, you have full control over saying, hey, I want this to be double or triple that amount, or I don't want as much as 75 interviews. I just want to talk to maybe 25 people. So you're in full control
Hmm.
of that. You can choose the response mode. We have text, we have voice, or you can give people the option to choose between voice and text. And then there's lots of stuff that you can customize in terms of the look and feel.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I
yeah, go
just before we
ahead.
go any further? I noticed the interviews were sort of up to about 15 minutes. And I know some of my clients would say, oh, we need at least 60 or 90 minutes to really dig into what they're interested in. And this is sort of a different approach, if I'm right, to have a lot of interviews and cover the same topics across many people, but have it be a shorter duration. Is that the way you're approaching it?
Yeah, spot on. I think it's for a few different reasons. The first is that I think we're still really new with this format. So for us,
Mhm.
we're very mindful of how long can someone stay truly engaged with an AI without having a human on the other side.
Mhm.
And so we recommend keeping it a little bit shorter because that's going to guarantee that that person's going to play fully engaged and be with the AI for the full duration of that interview versus someone who's sitting there for 60 minutes and gets bored
Yeah.
like 5 minutes into it. And then you're spot on about this idea of talking to more people for shorter durations of time. And it'll actually come into play with when I sort of talk about the results of this study,
Mm.
because we think, again, one of the really cool things about the AI is that it can be more exploratory. And so it can cover a wider range of topics and actually get more insights on more things and then adapt and optimize to the things that are becoming most relevant or coming top of mind as it talks to your customers. And
Cool.
so there's a lot of benefit, we think, to talking to more people for shorter periods of time in order to get a better
Mhm.
understanding of the full problem space. And then if you're really like, I want to dig into this one thing, there are ways to then structure the research to go deep. But you
Cool.
have an AI, you can talk to hundreds or thousands of
Yeah.
people. You might as well take advantage of it to see the data that comes out of
Cool.
that.
And I'll anticipate a question that I'll ask, but you can keep going. But the key point was, I feel like some folks, when we're setting up things and doing this, where it is sort of open-ended questions, they're like, but I want to know what percentage of people mentioned this as a feature that they really like, or that this was their pain point. And I think in many cases, there's an opportunity to use open-ended data and text to create that in a much more natural way than a like multiple choice might do. Anyway, you can think about how you'd approach someone asking you that as we get to results and things. But I want to let you keep going. This is great.
Well, no, I'm glad you preemptively asked that because it'll come back around when I show you the insights and the results. And I
Okay.
haven't talked about it as much, but another big benefit of the platform is that you can talk to more people, so you can actually start to see patterns
Mm-hmm.
emerge. And one of the ways that people do use this platform is to complement in-person qualitative research with this bigger,
Mm-hmm.
more robust data set. Because the way that I think about it is that in-person qualitative research was really good about building instinct around a
Yeah.
problem space because you're talking to a person face to face, you're digging in, you're connecting their experience with the problem space. Okay, but then you need to extrapolate that one across tens or maybe hundreds of millions of people, depending on what space you're working in. But then you also need to say, how do I make decisions beyond instinct? And that's where a platform
Mm.
like Herd comes in because they can actually quantify the prevalence of some of the themes that you're going to hear from talking to 5 to 6 people. It can quantify that on a much bigger scale. So
Cool.
I think there's even as we progress the platform, there continues to be a world for both of them. One to build that instinctive understanding of the problem space, and the other to help you define it at scale and then make decisions at
Yeah.
scale. And that'll come through with the way that we do the insights as
It is
well.
interesting how this sort of really historically we'd say, oh, I'm a qualitative researcher, oh, I'm a quantitative researcher, and the distinction is definitely blurring. So it's a fascinating world. But please let me keep you going. This is great.
Okay, well then I want to definitely get into the interview. So I'll just show some of the options we have for recruiting. So bringing people into the experience. The first is through link, where just the same way you would send out a link to a survey, you can send out a link to our interview experience and people will interact with it on the web. As I mentioned, you can also embed it directly into your product. And so we have this like widget that can pop up at a time or URL that you trigger, and it'll actually be able to recruit people directly as they're using your product, which is great because it can help just speed up recruiting, especially if some of those other channels tend to be really saturated. And then lastly, we've got a partnership with User Interviews, who just specializes in building a really big database of millions of B2B and B2C research participants. And so you can actually use user interviews to tell us what type of demographics that you're interested in. And then we'll go bring those people to participate in your research. So I'll show you kind of what things look like after you've fully published the study. You've got your web link, and let's say you email it to your customers or to some list of people you want to participate in interview. They'll first land on this welcome page, which you can brand in a few different ways with both an image as well as a welcome message. We'll click next. And depending on what type of sort of options you gave to your customers, they'll be able to choose whether they want to do it in text or in voice. And I'll demo voice now because voice tends to be a little bit more fun. So once I click voice, it'll drop me into the interview experience and we'll begin chatting with the moderator. So let's go. Unless, of course, it breaks in real time as I'm doing it. I'll just restart it and see if that solves it.
It's using Hyacera. What initially motivated you to try Hyacera?
Well, now that I'm 35, I'm interested in any anti-aging product I can find.
What specific anti-aging benefits are you looking for in a product like Hyacera?
I'm definitely looking for something that's going to help decrease the appearance of wrinkles and fine lines on my skin.
It sounds like reducing wrinkles and fine lines is a top priority for you. How long have you been using Hyacera? And have you noticed any changes in those areas yet?
I've been using it for about 3 weeks, like 3 to 4 weeks, and I've noticed that my skin is a little bit smoother, but it's still pretty early. So I'm probably going to keep on using it for a bit of time before I can really judge what the results are.
This is the product page for Hyacera. How well does this page describe Hyacera and the benefits of using it?
I think it describes the benefits pretty accurately. It's talking about skin hydration and minimizing wrinkles. I think the one piece of information that I would have loved for it to add is more of like some of the ways that Hyacera could affect different types of skin, and if there are any sort of adverse reactions or things that can happen depending on sort of what your natural skin type is.
What specific skin types or concerns do you think should be addressed on the page?
Well, definitely sort of talking a little bit more about what it does to people who maybe have darker skin because I'm, Black, or people who are at different ages, like whether or not they should expect different types of effects or different types of results depending on those skin types. So I'll just pause the interview there. But again, depending on sort of the settings and the questions that you chose, the interviewer is going to sort of go through this entire interview with your customers. They're going to be interacting in voice. And what you saw on this last question was actually the ability to bring in that media. So here it's an image, but it could be Figma prototype and asking people to interact with it, or even, again, a video if you want people to give you feedback on a video asset.
And
Go ahead.
Kene, sorry. When it was asking you follow-up questions and stuff, I was thinking you had like major topics and then the subtopics. And I guess I was imagining that those were essentially inspiration for it because it was very adaptive to what you were saying. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I showed when we were building the study, you are going to specify the discussion topics that you're interested in. So the AI is always going to follow that. And then you're going to give it feedback on the subtopics that you're interested, which is going to guide the AI. And then it's also triangulating everything that you've put here with a model that is really good at knowing how to ask qualitative user research questions. So every single time that it's having an interaction, it's triangulating all of those things and it's saying, what's the best next question to ask, given what I already know from what this person has said? What actually, we also do it based off of what everyone else has said, who has spoken in this interview, as well as the information that you put in when you were designing this interview. So that's really the challenge and why we spend so much time on sort of the AI underpinning this, because there's a lot of factors to kind of like try to bring in and put together, and we're trying to always triangulate them as best as possible.
Very cool. Thank you.
And then this last piece is again the insights. And so we give you a few different ways to sort of sort through all of the data that we collect. The first is that we write a very simple executive summary report that takes each of the learning goals that you mentioned as you were building the study, and then sort of pulls up the key highlights. And this is all fake data, just to keep Ritual's data private, but it'll give you an illustration of sort of the type of data you would get if you ran a study like this. So you'll see for this first learning goal around customer satisfaction, it's going to pull up and synthesize the highlights from the people that it's spoken to so far. And then it'll even pull the quotes that sort of line up to those insights, and it'll do it for every single learning goal that you had in the study. And the second piece is merging that qualitative and quantitative bucket, which is why I was sort of saying that it was like a perfect segue back into this piece of the puzzle, which is that we also are able to look at all of the dialogues that you had for each of those discussion topics, and we actually categorize and cluster the top themes that emerge. We give them both a qualitative description as well as a quantitative measurement, which enables you to not just understand sort of the why and the richness around it, but also understand the significance of it. So how big, how prevalent, how distributed is it across your user base? So again, for this first discussion question around motivations, 3 themes emerged. People who are really passionate about trying new skincare products, people who are influenced by recommendations, and people who are seeking solutions for anti-aging concerns. So we give you a description, and then we also tell you how many people fit into each of those buckets. You could even like download a quick, PNG of this and like pop it into Slack or send it over to email. And then we allow you to dig deeper. So in any of these themes, you can click them, and we'll give you a little bit more context about what we learned. And then we'll pull the quotes. We'll pull the actual verbatims that help you just really connect the words that people said to that theme, and also help you validate that we're sort of thinking about the themes in the same way that you would be thinking about it. And so that's really kind of the power of the analysis, is that you can go from super high level and just understanding with a 5-minute read what we learned, down to actually looking at the verbatims and seeing how people really talked about certain themes. And it's all automatically organized for you. No tagging, no coding, none of that needs to happen. We're doing this in real time for every single conversation that we're having with your customers.
Can you just real quick for the folks that so I know this is a minority of the people in the world, but for the folks that are into like taxonomies, or for example, they might have a categorization of, we've got these 3 benefits and want to organize it around those. Are there ways to try to I guess sort of refine the ways that it's doing the groupings, or add or delete a quote to a relevant point here?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that we're working on. Again, a lot of people like the first pass that AI gives them, but then there's always stuff that you want to do to kind of further align it to what you're looking to do. So right now, this analysis is done out of the box, and there aren't too many ways to tune it, though I would expect that those are coming quite soon. The other way that you can sort of approach it and get that is that you can ask a question and do a custom analysis on the data. So this is very similar to kind of like ChatGPT or Claude, if you've used it. If I had a specific set of frameworks that I wanted to ask the AI to deliver data about, I could just ask it here, and it would analyze the data and give me that custom analysis. It's not going to yet do kind of like this pretty graph that we've built, but it's likely going to be good enough to kind of help you get that output that you're looking for, even though it's not quite here the way that you like it. But 100%, like it's a super highly requested feature to be able to just tune this and adjust this to be more reflective of what you want.
The last question I have, and I promise to let you keep going, is for folks that maybe this is an iterative set of tests. So this is one in a series of interviews they've done, and they'd like to bring together, findings on what motivated you to try this product in this case across them. Is there a way to try to bring it from several sets of interviews?
So no, not right now. We can't do any merging directly within the product, but we are seeing that emergent behavior happening. And so we will be enabling that. It might look slightly different than what you're imagining it to look like. So I'll
That's
kind of
fine.
I'll hint to that a little bit in the sense of what we see happening with the ecosystem is increasingly there's data that you're getting from all different places, whether it's
Right.
Heard or you've done some in-person interviews, or maybe you've got some data in a survey that you collected, or in Gong because you've been doing customer calls. How do we make it easy for you to collapse that data within the tool of your choice
Right.
and then be able to analyze it across all those different data sources? So when we take our first step towards that, it'll be really looking to this eye of you've got data in a bunch of different places inside and outside of our platform. And we're going to make it easy for you to take this data and put it wherever you want to use to analyze it so that you can get the insights that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I know it's a very daunting challenge, and this is very impressive unto itself. So I'm not cool. Are there other things you want to show us here, or is this about what you want to show in terms of some of the major features?
Yeah, this is the bulk of it. I think, again, if you think about what the alternate and track B or track A was with Emma doing 15 to 20 interviews,
Right.
again, we actually did this A/B test and we wrote it up so people can read about it on our website. But we found a lot of really exciting things running the test. Like the first is, obvious. It took us a couple of days to field and do this research and do all the analysis. It was very turnkey, whereas it took Emma over a month to run around 15 virtual interviews for Hyacera. The biggest thing that we were proud of is the quality of the insights. So Emma judged head to head the quality of the insights we produced here and then the quality of insights that came from her in-person interviews, and found that our insights were on par with what she got from in-person interviews. But then on top of that, we actually helped to surface more insights overall. And that connects to what you were talking about earlier. Because we were able to talk to more people,
Right.
150 folks, we were able to cover a wider range of topics than she could just doing 15, 45-minute interviews. We were able to help her really see this space from a much wider aperture than she could with her traditional method by itself. And so that really kind of underscores the power of this tool, which is we're getting insights on par with what you might get for some of these, core use cases. And we're also helping you build like a more robust data set to help understand the space even better.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much for giving us a sense of Herd, and for all of us researchers who spend hours and hours doing that coding and trying to tease out, and someone asks us a question and they're like, oh, we have to go back to all those interviews and look through all the transcripts or play the videos. It's amazing what these things can do. And we actually did our own studies comparable to yours with a different product, and we had the same sort of realization that the quality of the insights we were getting were very comparable. And so the advantages of scale, multilingual, international, were so much greater that it made so much sense to use these opportunities when it's appropriate. Very cool. Well, I did want to turn for a moment. So thank you for showing me Herd, but it is here because of you and your co-founder and the amazing energy that you've got to have the chutzpah to do a product and to push through and make it happen and get customers and so on. So it's something I haven't been brave enough to do yet. So I wanted to ask you just what inspired you to create this and for this field.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a confluence of my own personal experience in my career and understanding the problem deeply. as well as having a pretty good understanding of where not just generative AI, but also where product development is going, I think, in the future. So before starting this company, I was a product executive for over a decade. I led teams at big companies like Spotify and Netflix. I led teams at early stage startup where I started as like the first product person and like the sixth person on the team. And so I've cut my teeth building product in lots of different environments, and it didn't matter where I was working, even though I was working with some of the best research teams in the world, I just kept on running into this friction of getting the types of insights that I needed at the pace and the speed and the timing that was required to make important product development decisions, because product development is just speeding up really fast. It's moving at a frenetic pace. You're expected to deliver value really, really quickly. And so when me and my co-founder were just thinking about this space, and as I mentioned earlier, looking at the ecosystem and where the ecosystem is going around product development, every single tool is moving towards being more iterative, more collaborative, more multidisciplinary. And really the key behind that is how can you use AI in order to drive those changes? And so we started off by saying, hey, how can we use AI to kind of transform this space? And my co-founder has a ton of just experience in building AI products. He got his PhD from MIT. You know, I met him at Spotify after he had sold his first company. So he's been in this space for a decade and really understands it. And we pretty quickly identified how we can make it faster, how we can make it easier, and how we can sort of empower people. And I think what we've seen now in the last year and a half as we've been building is just really being excited for, again, how the ecosystem is developing around us, where we're seeing, you know, the cost of building products quickly head to zero. And in a world like that, where anyone can create anything at any point in time with very little, you know, expertise, what really drives results? And we believe it's the precision of what you're building. Are you making something that is usable and valuable for your customers? And we just felt like we need a research tool that actually matches the speed of AI powered product development. And that's what, you know, that's what we're building with Herd.
No, again, I appreciate and wish I had your eloquence. That's very well said. And it's really interesting. I can't imagine being a product manager with my team all having like Vercel or Cursor or some of these new tools that allow you to do development so much faster, and you know, scarily make someone like me a developer suddenly. I think you're right on point. You know, I guess I did want to ask you both about how you see things evolving, but I did want to ask you if there's anything, you know, you went from zero, I'm guessing, to a product. And is there anything that you're particularly proud of, or that, you know, you all worked really hard at to make sure it was like really the best it could be, that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the care we've put into actually building and developing the AI, because it is really easy for anyone to stand something up. But I talk to people who are considering using a product in this space, and I say there's a lot of great companies getting started and building awesome products. And the thing that we hang our hat on is what we've done with the AI. So make sure to ask lots of questions and dig in deeper there, and really understand the experience that the team has and how they've manifested that into the product. I think that's one of the biggest things that we're excited about, and proud of what we've done. And then looking forward quite imminently, we're about to launch a new feature, which is our real-time voice-to-voice interviews. We really are using the latest and greatest state of the art, like so state of the art that our team is actually shipping code into the repositories of some of the big companies' technology that we're using, because we're finding and fixing things that they haven't found yet, because it's still all experimental. So we've been working really hard on that, and we're excited to release that in the next couple of weeks. Maybe by the time this podcast is out, that'll be out as well. And then, as I mentioned, in our whole future and our whole vision is like matching the speed of AI powered product development, which enables anybody, whether it's a researcher, a PM, a designer, the CEO, right, the executive assistant, anyone who has an idea for how to serve your customers better, can be generative and actually sort of validate whether or not that's going to work. And what that means is actually partnering with amazing tools in the ecosystem like Replit or Figma that are doing different parts of this, like design, prototyping, actually even coding and standing up apps and making her sort of the engine that's going to take those manifestations, go out, get customer feedback, get you data, put it back into the system, and help the rest of those tools iterate using your customer insights. And that is such an exciting space. It's really sort of motivating for us because we want to keep on building at the pace of everyone else. But I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll start to see people feel a lot more liberated because all of a sudden, many more of their ideas can come to fruition and be validated than the way that product development works right now.
Yeah, no, really interesting, and that's your vision seems very reasonable to me. And just since we have many people who are not sort of, I don't know, more on the nerdy side. So Replit is one of the tools that lets you essentially stand up rather than have to know all of the foundational software that you need on your computer to make something run. It basically is a virtual version of that. It's a web-based for API version. And so it's actually something to look into for us as well, to think about working with our PMs and devs and so on.
Yeah, well, definitely.
I did. It's so I hadn't thought of sort of connecting the dots like you're mentioning. That's really interesting. I guess that one of the last things I wanted to say is, have you found, you had an original anticipation of who might be using this and also this notion of sort of democratization. As I've been interviewing folks, I guess I've been asking, is there any use cases that you've been surprised to find that were really interesting? Like some folks mentioned, yeah, the HR team got really excited about using it internally with employees, or for considering acquisitions. They studied people who were users of a tool before purchasing it. And so I just didn't know if there were you had discovered, oh, I never thought my tool could be useful for this, but yet my customers are telling me that. Is there anything that comes to mind there you wanted to mention?
It's interesting. I think we've really been mostly focused on this space because, like I've said, we try to do a ton of specialization to make sure that AI is really good. So we haven't had too many folks, using this for HR. That's all that stuff is totally possible in the future. We have worked and gotten inbound from some PE and consulting firms that are actually saying, how can we use this information to help diligence as we're deciding which stocks or companies to invest in, or just trying to build a new unique data set that can help us prognosticate about where the market is going. So that's an interesting space that is quite nascent. Honestly, probably the most unique one is actually just a few weeks ago, a property manager, landlord reached out to me and said, I've got all these properties all over New York City, and I'm really just trying to understand how to make my buildings better so that I can make my tenants' lives better. Can I use your product for that? And that was really a new one that came on to our radar, but it totally fits within the frame of what we're doing. Is you've got more people than you could ever talk to individually, but you really want to understand something as nuanced as the place you call home. How well am I making that a home for you? And a tool like ours can really enable you to get that information in a nuanced way. So that's probably the most unique one that's come across my desk so far.
Nice. No, I can see also how your tool is really nicely designed for, if I'm a designer and I want to do some tests, or even I'm a senior leader and I want to, I think this is going to be a great idea. Or the reverse, the researchers and product team want to vet the idea from the very senior person, one or the other. You can really get there. And so that's really nice. Well, excellent. If people are interested and saw this and were like, wow, this is cool, are there ways you would recommend they get started in contacting you or trying your product?
Yeah, definitely. I think they can first start off by going to her.ellis.ai, and they'll be able to learn a little bit more about the product, read through case studies to get a better feel. You could also book a demo there. And so that comes to our team, and we love really sitting down and digging deep early to talk to you about what is it your team is trying to achieve? What are your priorities? And let's help you get started and get rolling. So we'll do some work at the beginning, but then you're empowered moving forward to get started. And in the coming weeks and months, you'll be able to get started on your own directly from the site. So that's also another really important feature that we'll be launching, because we know there's lots of people eager to just play around with these tools and try them out. So we're just going to continue to lower the barriers so that you can get a feel for it, and make sure that it's going to work for what it is that you're trying to do.
Nice. Okay, well, I just have to let you go at some point. It's been so interesting, and also it's clear. When we first started talking, we were talking about machine learning and some of the foundations of, and it's clear the depth of your collective knowledge of these kind of why your engine behind everything is very sophisticated. So that's cool. Brings me back to my dissertation when I was doing machine learning stuff. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing Herd with us, Kene, and I'll just sign us out. So I just want to say that's all for today. And thank you so much for tuning in and keeping up with the latest of AI for UX and for research. And please subscribe and let us know what other tools you'd like us to feature next. And wishing you brilliant insights with AI.